In the electrifying atmosphere of the Morning Joe set, where the bright lights cast long shadows and the hum of anticipation filled the air like a brewing storm, Senator John Kennedy stepped into the fray, his folksy Southern drawl ready to slice through the tension as he faced off against the host's barrage of pointed questions about what ICE agents out in the field truly consider a criminal. Is it just folks who've robbed a store or committed some heinous act? Or does it extend to everyday people? Like that father of 3 Marines who was just trimming bushes at an IHOP before being swept up off the street. Kennedy, with his signature blend of sharp intellect and down-home charm, didn't miss a beat, leaning forward in his chair as if he were chatting over sweet tea on a Louisiana porch. But his eyes sparkled with the fire of conviction as he began to dismantle the narrative piece by piece, insisting that he didn't know every nitty-gritty detail of that particular case without the file right in front of him. But let's get one thing straight. If someone's in the country illegally, that's a violation of the law. Plain and simple, and ICE isn't out there playing games. They're targeting public safety threats, the kind of dangerous individuals who make our streets less safe for hardworking families. He chuckled lightly, that wry Kennedy humor bubbling up as he quipped, "Look, if we're talking about fear in the community, how about the fear from criminals roaming free? Because some folks want to tie ICE's hands," and then he dove right into the facts, painting a vivid picture of recent arrests in Boston that had everyone in the studio, and surely the viewers at home sitting up a little straighter, like the case of Victor Gomez. Paris, a 33-year-old from Guatemala, who'd been charged with aggravated rape assault and battery with a dangerous weapon and indecent assault on a victim 14 or younger, a real monster that ICE had yanked off the streets before he could do more harm, making the point that these operations aren't random witch hunts, but precise strikes based on solid intel and criminal histories that can't be ignored if we care about protecting innocent lives. Kennedy pressed on his voice, steady and authoritative, drawing from his deep well of experience in public service, to explain that just the other day, IE had nabbed Kay Espinosa, another 33-year-old from Colombia, accused of aggravated assault on a pregnant victim. And if local leaders like Governor Healy and Mayor Wu were so worked up about an ICE vehicle parked legally on a public street, near a church, mind you, not conducting some raid inside the sanctuary, but just waiting to respond to a criminal alien's release, then maybe they ought to pick up the phone and thank those agents for making their city a tad safer, instead of stirring up unfounded panic that only helps the bad guys slip through the cracks. He wasn't about to let the conversation veer into emotional territory without grounding it in reality, repeatedly emphasizing that every case is different, and without the full background, the criminal history, the final deportation order, the investigative file built by dedicated ICE agents, he couldn't make snap judgments. But what he could say with absolute certainty was that being in the country illegally isn't something to brush off like a minor traffic ticket. It's a foundational issue that undermines the rule of law, and folks who are paying taxes, holding down jobs, and even having kids serving honorably in the military deserve a fair process. But if they're a threat, ICE has to act to prevent tragedies like the rapes and murders of innocent Americans we've seen too often from people who shouldn't be here in the first place. Kennedy's tone shifted seamlessly from light-hearted jabs to steely resolve as he countered the host's pushback, saying, "Hold on, now let's not get ahead of ourselves with talk of disappearing people. That's rhetoric. That's not only ridiculous, but downright dangerous, putting our brave ICE agents and their families at risk every day." And he backed it up by comparing it to how U.S. citizens get arrested daily by local police for breaking the law without anyone crying foul about vanishings. It's just enforcement targeted and necessary, the kind that's been standard for decades, until recent policies handcuffed the agency and let threats fester. He kept hammering home the point with that unyielding logic noting that if you don't like how ICE operates, take it up with Congress, not the men and women on the front lines who know exactly who they're after and why, drawing on examples of how these operations have prevented further crimes, like pulling over on a public road to intercept a released felon before they strike again, and he wove in a touch of his famous wit, remarking, "It's like complaining about the fire department parking near your house while they're putting out a blaze next door, folks. They're there to help, not haunt." As the discussion heated up, Kennedy didn't back down an inch, fielding questions about whether someone striving to get their papers in order with a license and a steady job counts as a criminal in his book. And he responded thoughtfully yet firmly, admitting that from what little was described, they might not pose an immediate danger, but without the specifics, the intel, the background checks, the potential red flags, it's irresponsible to generalize.